Chapter 1. Why do we have economics in the first place? Good question, yes? That's what we're really interested in, because you have to take this class, and you probably complained that you had to take this class, when in fact this is the best class you will ever take. Okay, so to understand economics, we start out by talking about something called the economic problem. And it's a simple problem. It starts with this simple idea of how human beings behave. And if you're thinking, well, maybe this isn't, every economist over the years pretty much has held to the fact that this is the truth of human behavior. Everyone from the far left economists to the far right economists, Karl Marx believed this. And it's a simple idea. It's the idea that no matter how much we have, we want more. There's a very famous quote from a progressive era economist, actually, that human beings are the only creature on earth that's never satisfied, that when they get something, they want more. We have unlimited wants. You buy a new car. If you've never gone out and bought a new car from scratch, someday you're going to go out and buy a brand new car, your first brand new car, and you're going to be driving around, right? You will have spent months trying to figure out what car you should buy, and you're going to be driving around, and you're so happy, and that's the first week. The second week you own that brand new car, you're going to be sitting at a stoplight somewhere, and you're going to look out the window of that car, and you're going to say to yourself, oh, maybe I should have bought one of those. And that's how long it's going to take. It's going to take you 10 days. Right? And at the end of those 10 days, you're going to be wishing you had something else. You get a nice boat to go out on Lake Mead. Pretty soon you want a yacht, and get your yacht, and pretty soon you want an aircraft carrier. Our wants never end. No matter how much we have, we want more. To make our lives more interesting, though, the resources that we have to take care of our wants are limited. There's only so much money. And even if you're Bill Gates and you basically have more money than you could ever spend, there's still 24 hours in a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Right? If you want to be at the Super Bowl and at an auto race in Europe that are running at the same time, guess what? You can't. Someday, maybe they'll invent a transporter and you'll be able to pop back and forth. But even then, you're still going to miss part of one of the two of them. Okay? We're limited. If we're a business, we're limited by the fact there's only so many workers and only so much space and only so much, right? If we're a consumer, we're limited. There's only so much time, only so much money, competing demands from other people in our family who want us to do things. Our resources are limited. Now we have a problem. Unlimited wants, limited resources. There's 100 things I want to do. I can do 10 of them, maybe, if I'm lucky. This juxtaposition, unlimited wants, limited resources, creates the economic problem. We get this magic word, scarcity. Things are scarce. Scarcity is the most important concept that underlies all of economics. Scarcity means people have to make choices as consumers, they have to make choices as workers, business has to make choices, governments have to make choices. Everybody is constantly having to make choices. Okay? Things that are valuable to us are things that are scarce. If it's not scarce, we don't have to make choices about it, so it doesn't get value in our value sense. Right? We don't have to choose whether to breathe or not. Air is not scarce, therefore we don't think about these choices involving air most of the time. Go to the grocery store, Stuff at the grocery store is scarce because we got to pay money to get it home, right? We have unlimited wants, we have limited resources. We might want to buy some stuff at the grocery store and realize that that's going to put us over budget and not buy it, and we make a choice. Okay? So the economic problem is the problem of scarcity. If somebody asks you, one word, what's economics? That's your word. Scarcity. That leads us to our formal definition of economics. There's a lot of different definitions of economics. The one you need to know is the study of choices consumers, business managers, and government officials make to attain their goals given their scarce resources. So the important part of this is it's the study of how we make choices under conditions of scarcity. That's what economics is about. When this definition says consumers, business managers, and government officials, that's not even the whole list, right? Workers have to make choices. Where am I going to work? I have to choose. Hopefully, I have more than one job I could get. Hopefully, the place I'm working isn't the only place in the whole world I could work. And I have to choose. I have to choose what kind of job I'm going to be. You have to go to school. You have to choose what kind of education you're going to get, and that has an effect on what kind of job you're going to get. So all these entities have to make choices. People, in every part of their life, they have to make choices. You can't go out with every person you'd like to spend time with. Okay, and it's not just even because they don't want to go out with you. There are probably more people, hopefully, more people out there in the world who would go out with you than you could possibly go out with. Every aspect of your life, you are making choices. So some people simplify this definition and just say economics is the science of how people make choices. Alfred Marshall, who was the greatest economist in the late 1800s, said economics is the study of mankind in the ordinary business of life. In other words, everything that people do, that's economics because they have to make choices. Okay? Choices. Ideas. How do we deal with that economic problem? Yes? So we have what's thought of as standard economic theory. And it has three key ideas in standard economic theory. Those three are rationality, incentives, and the margin. So we're going to talk about each one of these in turn. We're going to try to make sense of them, and hopefully you'll agree that they make sense. Okay. We start out this discussion by talking about the fact that standard economics is based on things happening in markets. All right, so how we make choices and the other three parts, we start out with this idea that we're dealing in markets. A market is a place where buyers and sellers come together and they negotiate an exchange of things. So it could be a market where you're trading corn for beans and the other person's trading beans for corn. It could be a market where it's a store and you go in and you pay cash and you get stuff out. Okay? If you're saying, I don't get to negotiate. Yes, you do. Let's think about Albertsons, okay, or whatever grocery store you go to. I understand that if you grab a can of corn off the shelf and you walk up to the counter and you hand the person behind the counter the can of corn and it goes beep and they go $1.89 and you go $1.50, that they're going to laugh at you, right? It's $1.89 or it's nothing, and you're not really negotiating, right? Except that you are. Because if that price on that shelf is $1.89, and everybody who walks into that store looks at it and says, that's too much for a can of corn, and the cans of corn just sit there and they don't get sold, what's the store going to do? It's going to lower the price. Okay? It turns out that one of the fundamental things of human nature is we really don't like this negotiating thing, most people. Most people do not want to go in and go, hey, I'll give you this, I'll give you... They don't want to do that. Most people want to know the price of things ahead of time. Okay? It's different in some sense. If you're buying a car and you're going to spend $30,000, you're going to spend more time dealing with the price. Or if you're buying a house, you want to be able to negotiate the price, right? So there are things we negotiate. Those things are usually pretty expensive and, or they're really rare or something. Most of the time we just want to know what the price is. But that does not mean there's not a negotiation and there's no market, right? There is. But it's all of us together, all of the consumers and all of the sellers, right? That's only going to work, and you might have got a hint of that. It's going to work when there are options. If I have to buy something and there's one person who sells that, I don't have any options. I have to buy electricity. NV Energy's going to sell it to me, and that's my choice, right? It used to be that there weren't any options for cable TV. And so you would call up the cable company and say, hey, I want my cable installed. And they go, we'll be out there in the next couple of days if we get around to it. And the service was bad. And now there's a million options, right? You can unplug, you can do satellite, you can do all this other stuff. Now they tell you when they're coming. They give you a refund if they don't show up on time. If you call them up and say, hey, I'm thinking of canceling, I just don't... They'll say, okay, I'll give you this for free, and I'll give you that for free, and we'll take that off. Okay? The more competition is, the better this system is going to work, and the better those negotiations, and the more fun those negotiations are going to be. Not to be redundant, but let's just say some of this stuff again. Markets. Markets depend on consumers having free choice. Consumers having options of what they can buy, who they can buy it from, and there has to be competition both ways too. So if you're a consumer, you need competition, right? You want there to be 100 restaurants and you want to be able to choose. Okay? Why? If there's one restaurant you can go to and the food's bad, what do you do about it? Okay? If, on the other hand, there's a restaurant that opens up across the street from UNLV and you go over there and you have lunch and food's bad, service is bad, prices are high, you're not going back again, right? There are other restaurants across the street where the food's great, the service is great, it's quick, the prices are good. You're going to go back over and over and over again. Okay? Your ability to make these choices is how the market works. And it works the same way from the seller's point of view. If there's only one buyer of something, then that buyer has a lot of influence on the sellers, right? If there's 10 people out there who are trying to sell something and you're the only buyer of it, they're going to have to offer you great. It's not going to really work. The system's not going to work. The government is sometimes the only buyer of things. So fighter airplanes, the government's the only buyer. And yet they get ripped off all the time. That's the opposite of what should happen, right? If they're the only buyer, the sellers should be falling all over themselves to sell it, and the government should be able to take advantage of that and get low prices and good stuff. Okay? When there's a free market, when there's lots of buyers and sellers, and everybody has choice and everything's good, there's an automatic mechanism that makes the seller want to produce good stuff, right? If there's 100 restaurants, they have to produce good quality and good service, or they're going to go out of business, right? Their prices have to be reasonable for what they're giving you, or they're going to go out of business. Okay? There's this beauty to this market when there's competition. All right. 3 ideas, right? 3 ideas. These 3 ideas of how economics works. The first of these ideas is what we call rational behavior or rationality. People are rational. That does not mean that people do sane things. So if you get up in the morning, and there was a famous guy in New York who did this. He got up every morning. He called into a local radio station, and he said some wacky phrase. I don't know what it is, but he did this every morning for decades. And eventually, the radio station tracked him down to figure out, what was going on. And he just believed that if he didn't call up this radio station and say this wacky phrase, his day was going to be terrible. A psychologist would look him up in his DSMR and tell you what psychological disorder he has, and maybe say this person is not, normal. An economist would say this person is entirely rational. If you believe you have to do that, if you believe you have to tap the wall in your house by the door before you leave in the morning, or you believe you have to get in your car from a particular side or do things in a particular order, and you always do it that way, and you sure work, you're rational. Your friends may think you're crazy. Why do you always do that? Well, you're rational if you do that. Economically. Psychologically, maybe not. But economically, you're rational because you're doing this thing that you think is good for you. That's what rational means. You've done the analysis, and we'll talk about this more, and you decided this is what I need to do to make me as happy as I can be, or as well off as I can be. Okay, businesses, same thing. Businesses choose to do things, and sometimes you look at it and you go, really? Why did you think we'd want to do that? But if to them that is the best thing they can do for their business, then they're being rational.